Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of MTG Steam Brewery. As you can tell, this week we're not doing standard. We're doing modern this week. Next week we'll do standard. But I have this really interesting modern brew I wanted to show you guys, as I will also be writing an article over it this week as soon as I get the time. Hopefully that and this video will be up by Wednesday, so please enjoy those. We'll go ahead and get right into the deck tech. We have a card you might not expect to see, one Keranos, God of Storms. He's the gods. People don't really think they'd see play in modern. There are a few of them are very good, and the fact that they're indestructible enchantments makes them extremely good in modern. Because outside of Path to Exile and the god being active, it's really hard to answer god in modern. So there's just not that many cards that see play that can actually deal with an indestructible enchantment. And his ability, whenever you draw a card, you could either get a lightning bolt something or draw an additional card, is going to grind out a lot of advantage and can win a lot of games, as this deck is a Hivemind combo deck, where you can't always just win with Hivemind, you have to kind of grind out the win. He will allow you to grind and kill any number of creatures with like Lightning Bolt would be, as the game goes on, that would be susceptible to it to keep you alive, or to just whittle down a player's life total. If, like, say they're playing blue-white-red control, he's going to be able to kill them eventually if they don't have an answer to him, which they probably won't, as he's an indestructible enchantment and is pretty much never alive in this deck. So that's why he's in here. 2 Snapcaster, the best 2-drop blue creature ever. He's giving any instant sorcery in our graveyard flashback. Especially with playing packs in our deck, we can pay for a pact, only leave up 2 mana, and still be able to have a counterspell without our opponent even knowing it or thinking about it. So being able to go Snapcaster Pact Negation to counter something is going to blow out a lot of people. They won't be playing around that. So that's going to do a lot of work. As well as we just have a lot of other spells that are just handy to have again. And we're playing a lot of singleton spells and 2 of spells. It just kind of gives extra copies of those. So he's so good. And we did want 2. 4 is a little ambitious with 24 lands. Where we'll be using Lotus Bloom as our main mana source. So we didn't really want too many Snapcasters in this deck. But he did warrant a 2 slot. We have 3 Hiveminds, the main piece of the combo. Actually, the combo card. You can't combo without this. Hivemind, whenever a player casts an sorcery, each other player copies its spell. It basically makes any counter war unwinnable for whoever's casting the counter spell, unless you have something like Counterflux or Time Stop. And my meta being slow and grindy, for my FNM meta, I'm able to play things like Time Stop and Counterflux just to win wars, or to, in my big case, stop a Tron from having an Emrakul with Time Stop. Completely stops it, takes away the extra turn trigger and the Emrakul itself. And a lot of people can't pay for packs. In my meta, the black pack mainly. So just going, ideally you get Lotus Bloom on turn 0, your turn 1. You cast Hivemind on turn 4, play a pack, and they die at their upkeep. That's the ideal, like, just the nut. It doesn't happen often, but it can pretty consistently. As well as this can just, being able to get your opponent's spells when they cast it to try and win the game is also going to be really good. So it's just a really surprisingly good card, but it is a 6-drop. So we did want 3 and not 4, because we can't always just draw all of them. We'll lose if we do. We have 1 Phyrexian Arena. Another way to grind out card advantage against slower and grindier decks. Drawing an extra card at return, even at the cost of 1 life, is going to be very relevant. To kind of offset that, we do have 1 Cruel Ultimatum, as in kind of to represent something that has to be countered if our opponent thinks or knows we have it in our hand. They just kind of have to leave up a mana for that. As well as, if we can sometimes cast this on turn 4, if you play a turn 4 Cruel Ultimatum, you're probably going to win the game just because you got a turn 4 Cruel Ultimatum. As well as, if they somehow answer your Keranos, you can always buy it back with a Cruel Ultimatum, which I have done once or twice. It's pretty handy. It also allows you to just go Cruel Ultimatum, get back Snapcaster, untap 1 or 2 turns later, Snapcaster or Cruel Ultimatum, and that just will probably win you the game because you've resolved 2 Cruel Ultimatums instead of 1 now. It's just kind of like a Sphinx's Revelation, but better. So we did want 1 of this. We have also our dig spells, our Force Hand versus Force Sleight of Hand. Very standard in combo decks, Ad Nauseam, the earlier version of Blue-Red Splinter Twin. They just play these to dig for their Splinter Twin pieces, and this we're digging for our Hivemind pieces or lands early. Definitely not the most powerful spells that we could be playing, but definitely very good at digging us through our deck and allowing us to filter our draws so we can set up for the later turns. One time stop, as I said, this is for Emrakul. As the Tron player in my meta, he's one of the best players there. I often go up against him. I just need a way to beat Emrakul, because it's kind of impossible to beat without something like a time stop. So I did main deck this, just have an answer to Emrakul, because the game will probably grind on as we've tested it. The game will go on long, so having a way to beat Emrakul, which is his late game finisher, is going to be very important. So that's why there is a time stop, as well as ideally you're super far ahead, you time stop end the turn. It's going to be handy. And with a Hivemind, time stop's also one of our 2 ways to just win the counter war no matter what happens. And speaking of counter spells, we also have 2 Remand, as you've been staring at for a couple seconds. One of the best counter spells in Modern. You just play, probably not in our deck when Shock Yourselves to represent it, but if you just Remand their turn 2 spell, you get draw a card, their spell's in their hand again. You basically play Time Walk, which is super powerful. And in Modern, with this deck, when you're playing against Blue-White-Red Control, Blue-Red Splinter Twin, Scape Shift, you can get into counter battles, and you just need cheap, efficient ways to have counters. Remand's one of those counter spells, as well as they go remand your spell, you can remand your own spell, get your spell back, draw a card, and their remand fizzles, which is going to be very important. It puts you really far ahead. And as well as just against other combo decks, sometimes you just need a 2-mana way to interact with them, and this is one of those. We also have 1 Mystical Teaching, 1 Gift Ungiven. They normally go get the other no matter what happens, just because they'll generate more card advantage, but sometimes when you have a Hivemind in player in your hand, you go Mystical Teachings, you get the pact you need and you win the game, or Snapcaster to flashback the pact you need to win the game. And Gifts Ungiven, being able to grab Mystical Teachings, Snapcaster, other 2 spells, is just going to, let's say, Cruel Ultimatum, Pact of Negation. That pile is normally really hard for your opponents to split, and you're probably going to get something extremely powerful out of it no matter what, simply because you can recur cards out of your graveyard with a Snapcaster or a Mystical Teaching with flashback, and the packs are 0 mana, so you can cast them instantly if you need to. So those are just handy ways to go get a pact if you need it, or just dig for something that can win the game, or put you really far ahead and put you in position to win the game. We also have 1 Counterflux. Blue-White-Red Control is also a big thing in my meta. So having a way to win a counter war is going to be very important, just being able to say no and mean it. This is also a big sideboard card in Modern. We just decided to main deck 1 and sideboard 1, as this card is going to be very good in those matchups, as well as just having a 3-mana counter spell is not really that terrible in a slower meta like mine. So Counterflux is not an unacceptable main deck in my meta. So we have one of those. We have 2 Is It Charm, a cheap 2-mana way to dig a little deeper into our deck. It also acts as a cheap counter spell or early removal. So being super versatile, we did want 2 of these in our deck. We also have 3 Terminates. This is some more early removal to go with our Slaughter Pact. There will be turns where you can just be tap land, tap land, tap land. Turn 3, you go Terminate a guy, Slaughter Pact a guy, and you're normally very far ahead at that point. Even though you're going to have to pay for your pact, you're still kill 2 guys for 2 mana, which is going to be very relevant. As well as Terminate is just kind of one of those removal spells we need that can kill anything that it can be targeted by a removal spell. So Terminate definitely warranted a slot in this deck. We also have 3 Pactification Slaughter Pact. Our combos with Hivemind, they are 0 mana spells, so we can do handy things with them. Tutor them up with Mystical Teachings and cast them immediately, or like flashing back with Snapcaster, like I said earlier. And winning with Hivemind, you have to have these, because if your opponent can't pay for their pact cost at their upkeep, they're going to lose the game. So you can always just resolve a Hivemind, untap if you didn't kill them that turn, play a spell, pact your own spell and make them lose the game that way, or Slaughter Pact one of your Snapcasters or such on your main phase, so you don't have to bother paying for your pact costs and they just die on their turn. Unless they play something like Time Stop, which probably isn't going to happen. So definitely very good cards. And then our final spells is 1 Expedition Map, because there will be a lot of bullet lands that you'll see in our mana base, as well. It can also just get us a land early if we're missing land drops. And 4 Lotus Bloom, kind of part of our mana base, as well as ramping. This is the ideal turn 1 because it allows us to win on turn 4, or cast a Cruel Ultimatum on turn 4, like I said. As well as just being very powerful, getting 3 mana for nothing is going to be very relevant in the control matchups. So those matchups just going to go long, and you need a mana advantage to have a chance to win the game. This provides that mana advantage that you need. 1 Tectonic Edge. We're also playing 3 other colorless lands, so it was really hard to... We can't really play more than that. Tectonic Edge, as powerful as it is, we needed our mana to be able to do things to pressure our opponent's Tectonic Edges. As well as the man lands in Modern, we have Slaughter Pact and Terminate, so not too worried about those, because other than like something like Creeping Tar Pit or Lava Claw Reaches, which neither of those are super popular right now, our removal can hit any of the man lands anyway. So we didn't really need too many of these. But we did want one because it can still count as a land drop and a removal spell against certain matchups. And then our other 3 colorless lands are 1 Desolate Lighthouse, 2 Nefali Grandyard. Like I said, this deck can go very long as we can just sit there with mana, and it's really hard for a control player to tap a lot of mana on their turn, because then we can just untap, play Hivemind, have counterspell backup, and kill them. So having a way to grind out a win with like Nefali Grandyard is going to be very good against those matchups, especially with our main deck Bojuka Bog we have. To exile graveyards, this can do some very neat things just by milling them, Bojuka Bog in their graveyard, passing. We played Lighthouse just as another way to filter through our deck. It's going to be very important for us to filter through our deck as the game goes along to try and draw the pieces we need to win, especially when we're a combo deck and that doesn't have very many other ways to win. 1 Quiltman and 1 Keranos are kind of our backup win conditions. So we definitely need some more dig, and having a way that's really hard to interact with outside of like a Tectonic Edge in the main deck is very handy. We also have 1 Teleria West. It can tutor up our colorless lands if we need them in certain matchup, or our Bojuka Bog if we need it against like Living End, or we just want to get rid of Snapcaster targets. But it can also tutor up for a Slaughter Pact or Pact of Negation, or even a Lotus Bloom, to just put us really far ahead. So it did warrant having one of those in the deck, just being able to grab our Pacts or Lotus Bloom in the control matchups. Sometimes you just need to grab a Slaughter Pact to kill something. This did allow us to do that. We also have 1 island, basic land of Bojuka Bog. As I said, there are some graveyard-based decks in Modern. Having a way to tutor up with Teleria West and Expedition Map while also hitting your land drop, as well as just shutting off some Snapcaster targets that you need to shut off, is going to be very relevant. Though sometimes it is just going to be a land you play tapped because it doesn't matter that your opponent has a graveyard. 1 mountain, the Mountain Island for Ghost Quarter, sometimes Path to Exile. Path to Exile is not too relevant against our deck, but we definitely want basics for Ghost Quarter. And then we have our 12 Shocks, as I don't have fetches, so I'm playing the 12 Shocks. And then we have Temples, just kind of some more card filtering to finish out our land slot. It's going to be very important for us to dig through our deck, especially with only 24 lands. These kind of help us dig for more lands. So there's our main deck of my Grixis Hivemind. I'm going to keep on tuning this deck, as it's not exactly where I want it to be, but I like it where it is. If you were to play this at a more aggressive meta with like Zoo and stuff, definitely you'd want to main deck your Angers, as I'll show you in my sideboard. But this is the main deck I have for my meta, so I hope you enjoyed this deck, and we'll see you in a second for the sideboard. Hey guys, welcome back to our sideboard. We're going to get right into it. Our first 2 cards in our sideboard are 2 Cruel Ultimatums. These normally come in against control decks, or maybe decks with like Thoughtseize. That's going to be able to interact with our Hivemind and make it a little harder for us to win with a Hivemind. So this is just another way to win. I'm normally bring out 1 Hivemind, some cards that are less relevant in the matchup, and just bring in some Cruel Ultimatums. Our control package isn't too heavy, as our main deck's kind of built to beat the fair decks and control decks of Modern, so we didn't really need too much. 2 Cruel Ultimatums and Counterflux was enough. As well as this card can sometimes come in against some other random decks that you just didn't expect, where Cruel Ultimatum is going to be very good. Sometimes even against 8-rack, if you spend a Lotus Bloom, you get a cast on turn 4, you're probably going to win against the 8-rack deck. And Hivemind's really hard to combo against the 8-rack deck because of how much hand disruption they have. So Hivemind normally just comes out against an 8-rack deck. We have Sowing Salt for the Tron matchup. It's normally not that big a thing, I think, anymore. And though our matchup isn't that bad, I just wanted a way to make it a little easier. And Sowing Salt's a perfect way to do that, because taking them off the Tron land basically makes it impossible for them to kill us through all of our time stops. Well, our time stop, our Slaughter Pacts, our Terminates, all of our interactive cards for them. It just makes it really hard for them to win, because they'll have to be naturally hard casting their spells, which gives us a ton of time. We have 2 Barter and Blood for the specifically for the Bowls matchup. It can come in against things like Merfolk or Zoo is just a 4-mana way to kill a bunch of guys. Just a good card against the aggressive decks, but mainly Bogles having a really tough time interacting with that deck. I really just don't want to lose to that deck as someone actually is playing it in our meta. I just need a way to kill his creatures, because they are all hexproof, so getting around that's going to be very relevant, especially with their totem armors. And we also have 4 Anger of the Gods. The Zoo matchup, this also just comes in against Bogles, because spot removal does nothing. Hivemind's really bad against them. and Anger can, if they don't have a ton of enchantments on them or none of the totem armors, this is just going to be a cheap way to kill all their creatures, especially on the play. Maybe on the draw you take it out, but I keep it in. So that's why that's in there. We have one Deathmark, a cheap 1-mana spell, answers Tarmogoyf is a big thing. Scavenging Ooze, Courser of Prufix from the Jund decks. Against the Zoo decks, it's just a 1-mana removal spell. It comes in against Pod, hits a ton of their creatures. This is like Voice, any of their Manadorks, Malira. There's a ton of their creatures in the Pod deck, as well as just being good against the Zoo decks, like I said. So that's in there. We have one Consume the Meek. Instant speed destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. It's for the Zoo matchup, the Fish matchup, even the Bogles matchup, because if they don't have totem armor, this card can kill any of their creatures. And that sometimes you get tricky things of being able to blow up manlands with this. When they animate their manlands and attack, you can blow up a manland with this, which can sometimes be relevant. You can tutor up with Mystical Teachings, which is a huge pull for this card to be in our sideboard as a singleton. So that card is definitely in there. One Counterflux, control matchups, and combo matchups like Similar Twin, where and Escape Shift, you just need a way to say no that they can't do anything about. We have one Rakdos Charm. The Affinity deck is just a 2-mana removal spell. Sometimes there are some more graveyard-based decks like Living End that you go up against. This and Bachuka Bog, or having both of them is normally enough to do it against the Living End deck, as well as just being able to bring in any Splinter to the deck. If you think your life total is going to be high enough, they just go make Infinite Guys. You go, okay, you make Infinite Guys. I'm going to kill you with your Infinite Guys with the Rakdos Charm. They'll probably expect it, but you could always bring it in if you don't think they're going to play around it. And 2 Devourer Flesh, once again, just some cheap removal against the aggressive decks, and definitely a house against the Bogles deck, being a 2-mana answer to their 1-drop and 2-drop creatures. So that's our sideboard. We couldn't really play Liliana of the Veil in our sideboard, sadly, because we are also just a combo and control deck. Playing Liliana to make card disadvantage, even if it is for our opponent, would also severely hurt us, as we're not really that able to refill our hand if we're discarding lands at the early part of the game. So we couldn't really afford a Liliana. But this is the sideboard that we came up with for the deck. It's a very fun deck. Definitely, I think, a tier 2 deck, maybe tier 1.5. It could definitely be improved upon and adapted to your meta if you want to play this. If you want to play this deck, if you want any suggestions on how to change it, don't be afraid to email us, puresoulsblog@yahoo.com, tweet at us at puresoulsblog on Twitter, or just hit us up in the comments. And you can also always check out my articles on mtgbrodeals.com and my works before I got on there on puresoulsblog.wordpress.com. If you guys just really don't want to talk to us, then hit the dislike button and tell us why you don't want to talk to us, so we can work on that, and maybe then eventually you won't talk to us. If you like us, then please subscribe and hit the like button. And we hope to see you for the Versus video. That will be with this deck tech this week. Bye guys, have a great day.